Episode number 303 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast, a space where you can find empowerment on your fertility journey. I'm your host, Michelle Orovitz, and I wanted to pop in before we get started to mention that if you haven't already heard, I've released my new book, The Way of Fertility, that has been created for those who have tried everything to conceive and are simply unsure of what else they can do. This book shares tried and true wisdom from ancient teachings along with modern research that supports much of what has been taught for centuries. It has been made with love, and the stories shared will serve to awaken hope within you. If you'd like to give it a test drive, I offer the first chapter for free, and you can find a link with more information in the episode notes. I would also like to extend an invitation to you as part of our beautiful community to share your thoughts and experiences by leaving a review of the podcast. Your words have incredible power to inspire others who are also seeking comfort on their fertility journey. And for anyone who has already left a review, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am thrilled to have one of my practitioner certification graduates from the Wholesome Fertility Method online program for practitioners and fertility coaches, and she is a fellow acupuncturist, Dr. Melissa Levy. Dr. Levy is a practitioner with passion for health, wellness, and fertility. Originally from the Philadelphia area, she ventured to Florida to pursue her education at the University of Tampa. A personal health journey changed the course of Dr. Levy's life. Facing health issues that Western medicine couldn't address, she discovered holistic practitioners who listened and considered the full body as a unit. The holistic perspective helped her understand her body better and manage her hormonal issues through acupuncture. This transformative experience inspired her to become a doctor of acupuncture and functional medicine practitioner. Dr. Levy holds numerous certifications, including Certified Functional Medicine Practitioner, Certified Health Coach, and Certified Fertility Coach. She founded the Integrative Wellness Center in 2019. Her vision was to create a healing sanctuary for individuals, especially those who have lost hope. Her evidence-based practice model combines patient values, the best research evidence, and her clinic expertise to offer exceptional care. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Melissa Levy. I'm so excited to have you on.
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to this, being able to, talk with you again and just dive into what I do and, the world of fertility.
Yes. And I was lucky enough to work with Dr. Melissa Levy, and she was one of my students for my fertility practitioner course. And I just have to say this, well, she kind of stands on her own anyway. Yes, she got an extra certification, but she's just a phenomenal, knows what she's doing type of practitioner. And you really went into everything, no stone unturned. I just love your motivation, your passion. It's legit. I just want to say that.
Well, I think we even talked about this, we're kind of just lifetime learners. So even though, when I saw the course that you had, I was like, well, why not learn a little bit more? I'm always diving into something, learning something new. And it just, the field that we're in, it's just kind of never ending of things you can learn and kind of better your education and further it. So it was great to just learn a little bit more. And then, the more you learn, the more you're open to and the more people you meet. So it was a great experience. So thank you.
Yeah. And I feel like you were already well-versed. You stand alone on your own. So it was just awesome working with you. But I would love for you to share your background and how you got into wanting to do this work.
Yeah, of course. I just remember, I think most people have a similar story. Is growing up, you're not really taught anything about your cycle. I had issues with my cycle. I was probably about 16 and I really didn't get my cycle yet. So I just remember going to the OB and they're saying, oh, all right, well, here's birth control. And I'm thinking in my head, great, now I'll be normal and, have a normal cycle. So I didn't know any better, and most people don't. So from the age of 16, I was on birth control to help regulate my cycle. And then also having ovarian cyst. I had surgery, I believe my junior year of high school for like a big ovarian cyst, which they thought was endometriosis. So, I'm 16 and they're telling me, hey, you've endometriosis without even looking at anything, just throwing names out there, which I think is something that happens a lot. People just kind of throw diagnoses and names out there without really having an idea of exactly that's what it was. So being young, thinking, oh, I have endometriosis. What is this? Looking it up, being scared, and then getting surgery and them telling me it was a dermoid cyst, which is completely different, which was still kind of weird. But so that was just my first experience. And I just never had normal cycles really ever. And then going into, my college years, I was always an athlete. So I was a personal trainer. I was working a lot, really stressed, a lot of stress on my body. So I just didn't feel good. I ended up getting Bell's palsy, which would not get better. And I was just on antibiotics and steroids for about a year or 2 years. Seeing tons of different doctors, not getting any answers. I think the thing that really frustrated me the most was going to a neurologist that I drove 2 hours to see and saw him for maybe 5 seconds. So it was just taking medicine, being on birth control, being on, prednisone for that long, you feel terrible. So my gut health, my skin health, acne, hormones, nothing felt right. And I look back at pictures of myself from those years, thinking I was healthy because I was a trainer and constantly working out and, had a lot of stress in my life as well. Looking back, and I just looked unhealthy. I looked puffy and just, all the medicines that they had me on, I didn't know any better until I got into the world of more holistic healing and learning more, being in that fitness and health. I was a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, yoga. I always wanted to help people. And I think this experience really helped me want to understand the body more. And I know there's a better way of healing. So I was introduced into more like holistic health and acupuncture. And then from there, I just kind of fell in love with the medicine. When I started acupuncture school, as a student, you're able to get, like $5 treatment. So we were getting treatment constantly. And I was actually able to get off birth control and regulate my cycle, which took a little bit. Going off birth control, my skin was a hot mess. Probably because being on the antibiotics for so long, not even thinking twice about it. But I think within like the 3 months of just Chinese medicine, herbs, and getting acupuncture pretty consistently, I was finally able to get at least a regular cycle and, just been working on it and haven't really had too many hormonal issues, since then. But it's just a lot. You learn a lot about yourself, I think. And in a way, it's a good thing because then it brought me to where I'm at and I can have a lot of empathy for my patients and saying, hey, I've been there, I had the horrible migraines, I had the horrible skin and all things I just were told were normal. And last thing I'll say, I'll never forget. I remember I was in acupuncture school. So I was learning a lot. As you start learning things and things that, maybe aren't right that doctors sometimes may tell you. So I remember I went to the OB and I was like, hey, I was told I had an ultrasound done and the tech told me, he's like, hey, it looks like you have PCOS. Once again, just throwing things out there. And I was like, oh, so I brought it up to my doctor. I was like, oh, I had an ultrasound. They said it looked like I had something called PCOS. And she's like, no, you don't. You just probably have endometriosis. Take some Advil and birth control. And that was my conversation. And I just left and I was like, what in the world? It was because I knew better at that point. And I just
so you could recognize, that wasn't cool.
Never going back to this doctor again. And not saying everyone's like that, but I think for women, it's just, we're told that, that's just normal, having painful menstrual cycles, having hormonal balances, all that stuff's normal. And, Advil and birth control are the solutions to everything. And the more I learn, and especially getting into functional medicine now, having my acupuncture practice for several years, I've got more into functional medicine. And I think that really connects the dots a lot for me too. Getting into hormone health and, our, detoxification. So there's so much that as women that we're not even taught about our cycles so I think just spreading the awareness. I think more women are wanting to know more and more.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the things that really struck me when I was going to school, of course, I had a very similar situation as you, or story, where I was given birth control pills as well. I think our stories are actually very common.
Really?
A lot of people go through this. Yeah. I've had so many guests tell me this, but then I've also had patients come to me and say that they've been put on birth control for this, that, and the other that had nothing to do with their actual like root cause.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is crazy. And being told, or believing that certain menstrual cycle irregularities are normal. I think that was the biggest aha for me when I was going to school, is that certain things that we thought were normal, like having diarrhea if you have your period, or constipation before, or breast tenderness, or PMS, or even cramps, that it's actually common. So we think it's normal. But it's actually not normal. So what are some of the things that kind of like you saw that you felt like, oh my God, like I can actually resolve this?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just the mood stuff too. Like I would turn into like just a different person, like along with that. Just hormonal stuff like PMS, just all that stuff that we're told is just normal. And I just like dreaded having my cycle all the time. And I think can get to a point where it might not always be perfect. Things happen, whether it's stress induced, if you're having a stress month, maybe some of those symptoms pop up, and it's a way of your body telling you like, hey, maybe, check in with yourself, check in with your hormones, what's going on this month that some of these symptoms came back. And I think what you said is definitely true. Is I'll even do my interviews with my patients and I'll say, so how's your menstrual cycle? Oh, it's like perfect. It's normal. Okay, good. So what's that like? Tell me, like, do you have PMS? Oh yeah. I always have PMS. I have like, my breasts hurt so bad. I get really moody like the first day and cry. And I'm like, so that we're told that that's still normal, which is still a thing. But yeah.
Yeah, it becomes almost like a background thing that's just like, oh, that's just that. Like it's normal. It's okay. And I think another thing too is just having that, something I frequently see, I have a perfect 28-day cycle, like textbook. So everything's perfect. But then you start to really dig in, like, when are you ovulating? Is it early or, nobody really knows, because they'll either just do LH or not really look into if it's confirmed ovulation, because you could still get a bleed, so there's a lot of those little intricacies that you often don't find in mainstream medicine.
Of course. And I think that's another thing is like, we're never taught to really understand our cycle. So when I am working with fertility patients, I'm saying, oh, are you ovulating every month? Yeah, on day 14. Okay. Are you checking your basal body temperature to see that rise in progesterone? No. Like on day 14, I just ovulate, so it's, some people don't even understand that there are signs that our body tells us, and it's not just day 14 that we ovulate, which could really impact fertility, because then we could be missing our fertility windows. So there's just that lack of education and, how we need to understand. And we're never taught. I mean, no one ever taught me that. I had no idea until I got into this medicine that day 14, or what is cervical mucus? Am I having that? And sometimes I ask women, do you have cervical mucus? Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
One of those things that no one's taught me. And I just think there's not enough time, obviously, in appointments and with your regular OB. So I think that definitely impacts fertility for sure.
Yeah, I often find too that people don't even really know much about their blood because they use tampons the whole time. That's another thing that I often talk about, because it is, first of all, I don't love shoving anything up there. When your body's trying to release, you're basically putting a stopper, in a sense. I mean, of course, it doesn't stop, it absorbs, but still it's not quite the same as really letting it out and letting it flow, and like letting that gravitational pull like release whatever, not stagnate it.
Yeah, of course.
But if you have to, if you must, I'm not saying like everything's 100%, but seeing what the blood looks like actually can tell you so much about your period, or tell your acupuncturist so much. But even there's a lot of information out there.
Of course. I mean, once again, a lot of my patients, unless they've been coming to me for a while, they know to look. Otherwise, they're like, you said, oh, I have no idea. I use a tampon. Are there clots? Oh, I have no idea. It's those things that, unless you've had acupuncture, you're probably not looking for it. And it tells us a lot. Our body gives us these signs and symptoms: the tongue, the pulse, the color of the nails, the skin. So all those things give us a lot of information, especially the blood. What does it look like? How many days are you bleeding? Are you clots? Is it, spotting? Is it, are you bleeding a lot, little? Is it scanty? So definitely that's a great point. And same thing with the tampons. It's a really good point about stopping and not stagnating the blood.
Yeah. I think that because our life is so busy, it's like, it's almost like too busy, and really kind of, it's important to allow yourself that rest if you can with the menstrual cycle. I think that we don't really get that accommodation often just in the world. But yeah, so you see a lot of those kind of things just from asking people questions. And how did you decide you wanted to work with fertility? What was your initial
So
pull?
I was pretty much a general, seeing a little bit of everything, and I still do, but I think women's health is something that I've always had that love for, just because there is such a lack of it and such a need for it. And then I think once I had my son, it kind of gave me that extra like fuel and that like just to learn more and more, because it's such an amazing love to be a mom. And I want to be able just to give that to as many people and help as many women as I can. So I think that is the thing that really kind of pushed it to kind of dive all into fertility. What all can I learn? How many people can I help? And what is going on? And why does our fertility issues seem like it's kind of becoming more common? And it's one of those things where like cycle issues are an issue, or they're prevalent, but now it seems like same thing fertility. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm having trouble getting pregnant. So it seems one of those things that's just becoming a normal, common thing, which I think is sad.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the things that you see just clinically? Like, what are some of the things that you notice that might be contributing to people having trouble conceiving?
Yeah, definitely. So I see stress, definitely, as you probably know. Know, even acupuncture has been saying for thousands and thousands of years, the connection between our uterus and our shen, which is our mind. So most women, we have a lot of responsibility.
And just if people don't know, the heart houses the mind. So the heart houses shen, which is kind of like the spiritual aspect. Well, spirit, mind, combined.
Yeah. And so we've known this for 3,500 years or more. But I think nowadays women are living in a more stressful environment. There's so many responsibilities that we have. Some women have multiple kids already and they're juggling work and family and just the pressure. So there's definitely a lot more stress. And if your body's in that fight or flight, it's not going to prioritize, reproduction. If your body thinks, oh my gosh, I'm in immediate danger, your body's not going to be like, okay, well, it's a great time to get pregnant. So I think definitely stress is something I see. I see gut health, definitely.
I want to talk about that. That's a good, it's important.
So many things come down to our gut, and they say, they talk about, our hormones or our body kind of being like that bathtub analogy where, our gut is kind of like that sewer line kind of taking everything out. And if things are clogged up and backed up due to underlying gut infections, which I see very common. And, from a Chinese medicine perspective, we look at that as the dampness, the spleen. So the other thing I find so cool and interesting is, Chinese medicine's been talking about all this stuff for 3,500 years. And then when you learn like more of the conventional and the functional medicine, it's the same stuff, just in different terminology. So gut health is so important for fertility. And then from a Chinese medicine perspective, we talk about the spleen and the stomach, and it has a huge relationship to our fertility and our overall health. So if that's deficient, and we've known that forever. So it's one of those things where I think gut health is so common and such a big topic right now. But it's not a new thing. I think it's something that we've known for so long, but now we're recognizing, oh, wow, our gut is really, really important. And so I think that's huge.
Oh, for sure. I will say too, like the gut-mind connection, also that spleen and stomach, they govern thoughts. So literally our thoughts can impact our digestion. Like if there are stressful thoughts, overwork, overworrying, that can impact our digestion. But now they're seeing, it's fascinating because I've been researching it, the enteric system, which is your gut nervous system, and then the CNS, which is the central nervous system, which is connected to the brain. And so how your thoughts can impact via the vagus nerve, like there's this back and forth bi-directional communication. And it's fascinating how Chinese medicine has been saying this forever. And now we're like literally seeing that they're seeing that people with certain types of mental disorders have a different gut microbiome.
So interesting.
It's fascinating. And then also they're saying that people with that meditate for a long time have a different gut microbiome that's more diverse and more enriched.
Our mind is, and I know you talk about that so much, and it's like, how much can we stress it? That it plays a big role, and it's sometimes not something that's easy to overcome. And it takes sometimes time to, maybe make some lifestyle changes or be able to do things that, sometimes you obviously can't change your environment around you if it's situational, but do things for your body that can kind of offset some of that stress. And then also, working with the gut is going to be really important. So and it's kind of like that vicious cycle of, if your gut's impaired, then it can
Mm-hmm.
affect your mind, and your mind's going to affect your gut. So it kind of just
Yeah,
rotates through. So, when we talk about holistic medicine, we're talking about not just singling in on one thing. We're looking at everything. We're looking at the gut and
yes,
the mind, because if you just
yeah,
work on one, you're forgetting about everything else, and everything is so connected. So you have
it
to look at
is.
everything.
Oh, without a doubt. It's
Yeah.
because you were just mentioning two like major things, which is stress and then the gut. But
Yep.
those things are interconnected. They're like pieces of a puzzle. And
Yeah.
that's really the beauty, I think, of Chinese medicine is that, and also functional medicine is that it looks at things holistically, like in all the different parts. And I love that you also do functional medicine and testing.
Yeah.
And because I think it's really important to really look beneath the hood and see what does your gut microbiome look like. So what could people get from like, say, a gut testing?
Oh, so much. So your whole
Yeah.
gut microbiome, I can tell us so much. So what I see a lot is I'll have a patient come in and they'll say, hey, I'm not feeling good. My hormones are a mess. I can't get pregnant, but my blood work, everything looks fine. So then, I
So then
look
they get
at
the
it.
unexplained
Yeah,
infertility diagnosis,
everything
right? And
looks
then they come
fine.
to you.
Yeah. And then as an acupuncturist, we take 2 seconds, we look at their tongue and pulse, and we can say, whoa, there's definitely a lot going on. And then I like to order things like the GI map, which definitely is my favorite test by far, because it doesn't just say yes or no, you have something. It'll give you the value. So it's qualitative PCR. So it looks at all the gut microbiomes, looks at parasites, it looks at H. pylori, which is so common. Yeah, so our gut microbiome, and it's not even like looking at, what can we do to fix it? So sometimes I've had patients, looks at beta glucuronidase, it looks at calprotectin levels, looks at so many different things to see if there's any gut inflammation in the body. Is there dysbiosis? Is there maldigestion? So maybe you're not absorbing all the nutrients. So there's definitely a lot. And if people even have cycle issues, I've had patients who have irregular cycles, and we don't do anything else but do a GI map and heal the gut, and their cycle regulates by itself on that. So
That's
there's
amazing.
so much. If you have someone that can actually read the GI map and knows how to understand it and what the patterns are, it is so beneficial. So I really love the GI map. It could tell us so much about the gut.
Amazing. And so what are some of the things or implementations? And just to kind of give us examples of like
Yeah,
different conditions. And clearly this is not a one size fits all, which is
of
why
course.
you have to test because you
Yeah,
could see
exactly.
like what's going on specific to the patient.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say some things that I see a lot on the GI map, for example, like I'll see H. pylori a lot, and then with H. pylori, you'll see things like strep and staph infections as well in the gut. And what that does a lot of times is cause hypochlorhydria low stomach acid, which then can sometimes cause things like parasites. You're not killing off things if you have low stomach acid, and then maldigestion issues. So just doing things like mindful eating, so taking time and chewing your food, digestive
Yeah.
enzymes are really important. Then I love antimicrobials like olive leaf and oregano. They're really great. Olive leaf is antioxidant. It's antimicrobial, antiparasitic, anti-yeast. So that's something I use a lot with my
Hmm.
patients that have any type of dysbiosis or overgrowth or opportunistic growth in their GI map.
Have you heard of mastic
Yeah,
for,
mastic. Yeah,
yeah,
mastic. Yes, that's really
H.
common. And
pylori?
usually, if you have, it depends like what bacteria or overgrowth you have. For example, like H. pylori typically needs at least like 3 types of
Hmm.
herbs to kill it because it is very stubborn. So usually using mastic, olive leaf, oregano, black cumin seed oil is amazing, and that is
Hmm.
good against H. pylori. It also helps regulate blood sugar, which is another huge thing I see with fertility issues is blood sugar regulation. That's another thing that can affect our cortisol levels and or hormones. So I put a lot of people on black cumin seed oil as well, and that's antioxidant as well. So those are things that I definitely recommend for things, but it really depends on what bacteria, what overgrowth, what patterns you're showing. But just common things I see is like hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid. I see a lot of like dysbiosis, leaky gut, and then really just taking the measures and really just putting it into phases of what can we do, remove, the gut infections, and then build up that gut wall and build up that diverse microbiome again. So it takes
Right.
time. It's not something that happens overnight. But then I
Yeah.
also think looking at why do we have this in the first place? Why do we
Right.
have
Right.
these gut infections? Why is it stress? Is it, our diet, environmental, things as well.
Yeah, you think of like spleen yang deficiency because
Yeah,
the
exactly.
fire, that
Yeah.
digestive fire really is in Ayurvedic medicine, Agni. That
Yeah.
fire is really what kind of kills off all of
Mm-hmm.
those opportunistic
Yeah.
bacteria and infections. But if we don't have that digestive fire, but all the things that we learn about, don't eat ice cream, don't have ice cold drinks, because what
Yep.
you're doing is you're actually diluting that fire.
Yeah. No, I love that. I never thought about that as like that looking at that as like the stomach acid. And that's such a great way to look at that. And that's the thing. I always come back and find these awesome like relationships between Chinese medicine and conventional or functional medicine. It's like it's all the same stuff. We just called it different
Yeah.
things in a sense.
Yes.
So and now that we have all this research that shows and validates everything we've known for a long time. So I do like, combining the two of those. It's such a great practice to be able to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. And when it comes to certain conditions, have you
Mhm.
had people where you suggested, okay, you need antibiotics for this because it is kind of like really strong, where sometimes they need a stronger one, and then with that kind of help to navigate and kind of work it out with probiotics?
Yeah, so I haven't had to really refer out for any antibiotics because most herbs and supplements usually are. There's research that shows that they are pretty good at eradicating most things, and they have multiple functions and a more
Hmm.
broad spectrum.
Yeah.
But then adding in the probiotics and different types like S. boulardii is really good at helping with H. pylori, and then that's another thing I love about the GI map is it'll let you know like what's overgrown, what's
Hmm.
deficient. So let's say you have a huge overgrowth of lactobacillus because of maybe hypochlorhydria, right? You're not breaking down the food, so then it starts fermenting and you get that overgrowth patterns, which we see a
Hmm.
lot. Then you probably might not want to take a lactobacillus, a probiotic. You probably want to do something a little bit more diverse.
Right. Or maybe a spore based, right? A
Yep,
spore
or like a
based.
spore-based probiotic, which are getting more popular now. But then another thing I see a lot too, which I've been seeing a lot more recently, is there's something called acromantia, and I see a
Hmm.
lot of people that have none detected at all in their gut, and that's a
Oh,
really
wow.
common, and that helps with our gut mucosal lining, and it
Hmm.
also they show that people have low acromantia have more things like insulin resistance and obesity, and that's
Wow.
something I keep seeing a lot. Is there's like zero detected in the gut.
Wow, that's so interesting. I have learned a lot that some of the ingredients that we see in processed foods actually shift the gut microbiome
Yeah, I believe
dramatically.
it.
And I wonder, I mean, if it's like that or toxins that we're exposed to. I mean, there are things that are really literally like we don't even realize have a role or play a role in our gut.
Yeah, and I think another thing is like that I see a lot too is we get into like routines of food and we'll eat the same food over and over again. And I remember in like Chinese
Hmm.
medicine school, they talk about that. They say your body doesn't want to eat the same thing over and over again. Like mix it up. Don't eat, chicken and broccoli for every lunch the whole week because your
Yeah,
body wants that diversity. And now we
it's
see
true.
that with the gut microbiome. It's like the more diverse you eat, the more different foods you're eating, the more diverse your gut microbiome. You don't want to keep eating the same 7 foods all week long, and I know
Yes.
some people kind of get into that routine of things that that's all they eat.
Right. And they talk about eating for seasons too,
Oh, yeah.
because during that season, whatever that weather or the climate, your body's reacting and what will grow around you, the food that grows typically is there to balance that out.
Yeah. Like
It's
the seasons. And
fascinating.
that's something, I mean, I think a lot of people don't do as well as eating with the seasons. And it's one of those things we don't think about.
You don't think about it because you don't even know because
Yeah.
everything gets shipped from everywhere. So you're like, I
All
don't
over
know
the
what's
place.
growing
Yeah.
now, like here.
Yeah.
And I think that's like another thing that and also the endocrine disruptors, all these things that you have to do a little more homework for,
Yeah.
but it's not as intimidating as it originally sounds. It seems a lot worse. And this is actually why I will say it's worth hiring a fertility coach because you
Yeah.
have a lot of that extra time. Like all of that is done for you. And, that's the benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think like everything's so individualized too. Like
Mhm.
what might be good for one person, isn't the main focus that someone else needs. There's so much and it can definitely be overwhelming. Like when you start to think about it, like detoxification and basal body temperature and ovulation and
Yeah.
the food, and it's like
Yeah.
sometimes that stresses people out. And it's like, well, we
Oh,
don't want
yeah.
this to be stressful. And I also have had patients that be like, they're like, well, this person get pregnant and they're not eating, super, super healthy, but everyone's bodies are different. We
Right.
have genetics and,
Yeah.
different stress, and everyone's bodies can handle things differently and like
It's
that
true.
toxic load. And so it's hard to compare yourself to someone else, which is never a good thing to do.
Oh, no, absolutely. And somebody might be less tolerant for one thing, but more tolerant for another. And that might be completely opposite from the next person. So you
Yeah,
just never
exactly.
know. You really need to like honor your own like body's personality type. I like to kind of say,
Yeah,
because it has its own signature, its own personality. Like everything is unique, even though
exactly.
we have the same makeup, we all have like the same organs and
Yeah,
similar way of functioning, but each person responds differently really to food, environment. I love the saying, one man's is another man's poison,
oh
because
yeah.
it's true. There could be something incredibly healthy, but one person could be allergic to it and have a horrible reaction to it.
Yeah, exactly. And even going, I always go back to Chinese medicine, but it's like food therapy. And, I have patients come in and they're like, I look at their tongue and pulse and I'm like, well, you shouldn't be eating these foods. They're like, yeah, but they're so healthy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they are healthy foods, but they're not healthy for you at this time of what you
Yeah.
have going on in your body. If you have a lot of heat and inflammation and you're eating, spicy, hot, warming foods, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel a little worse, right? Versus someone who's maybe
Right.
a little bit more deficient and really needs more of that warming food. So it always comes down to that individuality, whereas everything's similar is, yes, we want to make sure we have a good, healthy, gut and blood flow and mind, but everyone's situation is going to be a little different.
Totally. Like it makes me think of like somebody who's really thin and is like super cold all the time, but
Yeah.
all they want to eat is raw foods and salads and like juice.
Oh
All of
yeah.
that has such a cold nature. You're just exacerbating like the symptoms and
Oh
making
yeah.
it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes people don't want to hear that. I'm like, well, stop juicing. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
it's so healthy. I'm going to eat a little bit more soups. And it's not like you can never do it, but it's all about balance. And I think,
Yes.
things always come back to balance. And we live in a world now where everything's such an extreme. We're either completely vegan or completely keto or completely, one thing. And or working out so hard and won't do anything, or we're not working out at all. So it's,
Right.
how can you find that
Yeah.
balance of eating a whole diet and maybe doing more yin or calmer exercises during a certain part of the cycle and then doing more intense if you want. And so everything comes back to balance, which is something I think is hard.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's an art. And then once you figure it out, because I think that we're primed for it, we're designed for balance. Our bodies know, and our bodies communicate with us when things are out of balance. If we're too hot, to want to cool down, and vice versa. So it
Mhm.
knows what to do. It's always communicating. Sometimes we want to like ignore that communication. Over time we stop hearing it, but it's kind of coming back to it is a lot easier than I think a lot of people think,
Yeah.
because we're primed for it. We're designed to be connected to that. So I know that you work with a lot of people online. So you're able to basically have consultations with people and do testing of all kinds, like different functional testing based on that, either customize, but also that you have a program for
Oh yeah.
people who may not want to commit to like a one-to-one, but they can also just take your course
Yeah,
as
of course.
well.
So yeah, so I wanted to try to make a course that was like great for like good for anyone, right? So it's easy to understand, but it kind of covers a little bit of everything and a lot of education. Like I said, a lot of it is sometimes women don't understand their cycles or even know when they're ovulating. So there's modules that talk about cycle education. How can we, increase our sperm and our egg quality? So talking about the man and the woman. I'm talking about functional tests. So if you're like, hey, I want to get some testing, but I don't want to work with someone, or I don't know anyone, or my doctor won't run these, you can go online to our Rupa store and just put in your own order. I always recommend obviously going it over with the doctor, but I give you the option of like functional ranges and the standard ranges, which are going to be different. Functional ranges are like optimal, where we want you to really be. We talk about yoga, mindfulness, supplements. So we talk about a lot in the program. It's self-paced, which is so nice. So I had people say, I love it because I can go back and listen to it over and over and over again. And so it was a really fun to make. And I love being able to provide that information to people.
Awesome. And I actually got to see behind the scenes, look at it, and it is really, really very thorough. It
Oh,
has a
thank
lot of
you.
information, really, really well done. I have to say, I really admire you as a practitioner. I think you are amazing at your craft, like truly, really so honored to have been able to work with you and like get to know you, but you really are amazing at what you do. I think that part of it is just being really passionate, but also having that drive to keep learning and learning and learning. And I think that that's what keeps us going as practitioners.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you. It's so sweet. Yeah. When you love what you do, you just want to keep learning and it's fun.
It is fun, right? Well, that's what you want to find. You want to find a coach or practitioner that has fun doing what they're doing, because that's ultimately, it's a good sign that they love what they do and they're good at it.
Yeah.
So Melissa, such a pleasure having you.
Yes,
if people want to find you, how can they find you?
So I actually have a clinic in Jacksonville. Then I also work online with people with healthbymelissa.com or Integrative Wellness Center of Jacksonville.com. I do virtual and in-person visits.
Awesome. Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.